Hey, I wanted to thank folks who have put reviews in iTunes. You don't even know this. You never look. But we got these really sweet reviews in iTunes, which folks, I would ask you to do. I'll shamelessly ask because I think it helps rankings and stuff and helps people just know what the show is about. So if you get benefit from the show, if you go to iTunes and leave a review, I'd greatly appreciate that. And I want to read a couple because they ask about, and this is what I want to throw to you, topics people want covered.
Oh yeah.
So this is literally, she actually put Connie in Nebraska. She gave us a 5-star review. Thanks, Connie. She says, I've listened to the podcast for a while. I heard the referral on the Ziegler podcast and I'm grateful for the great info. Could you please discuss, number one, hypothyroidism and prevention?
Yeah.
Have we not done that?
Maybe indirectly.
Okay.
But not.
Well, there's a request. Mm-hmm. Number one. Number two, the side effects of statins and reversing the need for those.
Okay.
Okay. Number three, intermittent fasting during training for races.
Right. So fasting while you're training.
Which I relate to because I'm sometimes doing that for a race. So there's some on our list that we can hit. And she says, on a side note, I've discovered the great fiction of Charles Martin and great books by Andy Andrews. Thanks for your comments. Charles Martin.
Yeah.
You gave me the first book, Long Way Home.
Yeah.
I think it was called. You just gave it to me. One of the fiction books. You said, hey, check this out. I read that. Loved it, got another one, and then had Charles on the Ziegler podcast and have gotten to know him some. So we little by little are reading all of his books. So thanks for that. So yeah, Charles Martin, if you guys want to check out a fiction writer who has fiction that just is killer stories. He's got movies about his books. But also for me, it's just, it's characters I want to live up to be like. Here's another one. I don't know what they just have a, funky iTunes name, but they say, I've listened to your podcast for a while now and absolutely love it. I would be extremely interested in an episode featuring CBD versus cannabinoids. The health benefits are one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, cannabinoids is what CBD is.
Okay. Well,
that's what
I have no idea.
Well, we're in Colorado.
I know. Can you talk on that?
Sure.
I'm totally clueless. Okay. So there's another topic. And this one was the guy emailed in, which folks, if you go to kevinmiller.co, there's a little email form. You can email us. And he said, have you done a show on stroke recovery and or prevention?
No, we talk about neuroplasticity and Parkinson's and those kind of things, which is related, but not specifically stroke prevention. And then recovery is tough. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so there's some topics and same thing, folks, if you have certain topics you'd like us to hit on, let us know. Well, so this aspect of speed, which you're the one that brought it up so much. So we both read the book, The Future's Faster Than You Think by Stephen Kotler and Peter Diamandis. So it's really about AI, artificial intelligence, which honestly at face value, I don't care about. It's just not it's
behind the scenes. Yeah. It affects us all. It's coming. Right.
But so they're talking about, this is what AI is doing. This is how it's affecting us. And then as I read it, I thought, gosh, this is something that benefits me to know what's happening in our culture, how things are in social media, how they're manipulating us to some degree is how I read it. And looking at this thing, we just did a show on anxiety not long ago and say, how is speed helping and hurting us? And that's the question that I put out. A lot of people responded to it. I don't know if I'll go through all the responses, but that's the question I wanted us to throw back and forth is, I like speed. I'm impatient by nature. So are you. If anybody drove with you, they would know that you're an impatient man. And I am too. We're both, aggressive. So in a great analogy this morning, I'm rushed getting my kids to farmer's market. I have 4 kids with doing different things. It was the first time we had all 4 of them there this season. And I'm rushed and I'm coming to meet you guys for some, doing life together discussion at Starbucks. And I'm sitting there at stoplights trying to do the mobile order.
Right.
And it messed up and I'm getting frustrated. Okay.
Right. Because your mobile order isn't going to be ready by the time you get there and you're going to lose 3 minutes or so.
And I'm sitting there in the car and if somebody had seen me, they would say, well, there's an irritated looking guy. And I finally, thank goodness, became aware of myself. This is stupid. And I put the dumb phone down and just drove to Starbucks, stood in line for a minute, finally did my order. They had it pretty quick, but man, so that's part of the concept is are we letting the speed rule us maybe instead of us ruling it?
Absolutely. Well, there's going to be both sides
I
of this,
know.
but I would say absolutely thinking about email, and then now we barely have time for words, and it's an emoji, and we live in a paperless medical office that still somehow generates, papers all over the place. And now uh, the time on the keyboard is twice as much as it would have been, and we are shackled by it, and even more so when we have the perception that I'm being hampered, I'm being slowed down,
Yeah.
I'm becoming irritated.
Well, and we can look at this, and I want to try to do justice to looking and saying it's not all bad. I mean, again, I love it. We were just talking about purchasing, so I am
Right.
so grateful for the speed, the one click. And so I think of, gosh, man, I need XYZ for the camping trip this week. Do they have it at Walmart? Where am I going to go? Wait, I go to Amazon. There it is. Great price. Read the reviews. Boom, purchase it, and it shows up the next day. That is unreal. And the amount of time that saved me of gas that helps the environment, the lack of helps the environment. And I'm able to put that time into work, into my family, into whatever. I appreciate that speed. But now that is part of the question. Am I going to take that savings and be productive with it? I mean, we go back, we talked about that before. If you had an extra hour every day, what would it do for your life? You had an extra 2 hours, and generally it would do nothing. You would just fill it the same way you fill all your time now.
All the other hours that you already have.
Mm-hmm. So on this, Randy, ultimately what I got to thinking about, and somebody else wrote about this, I couldn't find it, but the concept of if you went back 2 generations and told your great grandparents, imagine waking up tomorrow with electricity, washer and dryer. You can just order something and get it the next day instead of, a catalog and snail mail. You've got a car that can get you somewhere. Phones, you can talk to anybody without leaving, all that stuff. Their feeling would be, holy smoke, seriously? If all, and your food, you can just go buy food. You don't have to harvest it. Water, you're going to get right through a sink. You don't have to go out to the river and get it or from the well. All that, I'm making this, I'm making the concept up. We get it. They would think, oh my gosh, I would only have to work like an hour and a half, 2 hours to survive as we do today. And the rest, I'd have free time. I could play, I could create. So now here we are today
with a lot of free time.
Exactly. And we have less than, is the speed helping us? Again, not to just diss speed, but to just look at it. And I hadn't thought about that before, but are we using it for our benefit, or are we letting it, like I am? It should be nice enough to go, I'm in a car, I'm driving to this place. They're going to give me the exact coffee I want in a few minutes. I'll stand in line for a minute, but that's not enough. I'm going to do a mobile order so I can rush in, grab it so I can get out of the seat and sit down with you guys and go, okay, let's talk about important stuff.
Yeah, I'm here.
I was being controlled by the opportunity for speed. Maybe that's it. So where is
the perception that you could have been faster?
Yeah. Could have saved time. I could have done more. Is that true life?
No, not in that moment. Not in that moment. I'm thinking back to the guys back in 1850 or whenever they were. What would they do with all this extra time? And it reminds me of that other quote that we think about all the time. Are we able to sit alone by ourselves in a room for 15 minutes and just think? Or is that perceived as a waste, as unproductive, as whatever? And these days, people who have free time, I would argue we have too much free time.
Or we have the opportunity for too much free time, wouldn't you say?
Well, right.
If you're thinking about your kids, I would say.
And both, even us in the working world, I lament like, gosh, if I had more time, I could do this and that and the other. But at the same time, think of it, even a 2-day weekend that is so, and for me and you, it's most often a 3-day, and we still perceive ourselves as not having enough time to do what we need to do. The idea of margin, the idea of having space within the kinds of things to go be and do these other things. But how often do I take that time and think and sit and ponder and create a self that's better than the self that I was? We tend to fill it up with
More stuff. I like this. I like a word here. So Cindy Sipes, she responded to my question. She said, well, things that need to be sped up are taking way too long. And the things you want to savor go by so fast. That's the challenge of this world, this life. How do we savor the fleeting items and speed up recovery, healing, understanding, so those fleeting moments mean more and are more worth remembering? I appreciate that perspective. And I like the word savor. And I've done this literally at the table with the kids, though I know I'm violating it myself in other areas of life. But here I do make this gourmet meal that I spent 2 hours, thinking about preparing, buying food, working to afford the food. And we can expand it and go, man, this is a full day meal right here. And the propensity for all of us to sit down and to be watching a flick or even talking and just wolf it down. Yeah. Buddy, put that back in your mouth or cough that back up and chew that and savor those tastes. I mean, wouldn't you think of if it really tastes good, wouldn't you chew it slower and really savor it? Because we've kind of gotten in America, man, that's really good. Woof, 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 and just shove it down there. I'm thinking, did you taste that? When are we savoring the moments? And again, just getting caught up in this speed cycle, get to the next thing.
We don't.
And
now think about it. When did you last savor work? Because you guys have to cut wood. Other people kind of look at that as, gosh, I wish I could get out in the woods and, chop a tree down for the campfire or whatever else. And it feels like a vacation. We're trying to savor exercise. When did you last savor meditation?
Yeah.
Or so you can savor exercise. We can savor Brussels sprouts.
Well, you're saying that now. I'm getting ready to take off on a solo getaway for Father's Day.
You've constructed it
to savor. And I don't even think about it as exercise. I'm going to go have fun on my mountain bike, but I was a pro cyclist. It's very natural. My default mode.
Yeah.
So my default mode is to get out there and hammer. That's the word we use. You hammer and just to go fast and look at my miles per hour when I'm done and whatnot. And it's been really just in recent months, I'd say the last half year, 6 months, where I've realized I don't have to. I mean, if it's fun, if I'm enjoying the speed, do that. But I can also go at a moderate pace and just enjoy riding. It's so foreign to me. I'm so caught up in, again, speed. Yeah. So savoring the exercise. You said something that made me remember a guy back in Nashville, Tennessee. He owned businesses, banks, and he cashed out. No, he sold his bank. They had a local bank, had a few branches. They sold it, millions. If my mind serves me right, he made like $50 million. And what he did is he went out, bought his own riding lawnmower and mowed his yard. So he's had people doing it all this time. And he said, no, I want that. He went, and at the time, I think I probably judged him poorly and thought, that's stupid. Go produce something.
Go produce. Yeah.
Yeah. And
think of the time your hours per dollars per hour worth. And you're sitting there on a riding lawnmower.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yet that was true life for him. That's what he wanted to come back to. Now, a bunch of people here did talk about, well, here's a good one. Faye Bryant. Things seem to happen so quickly. I long for the time formerly spent on the front porch with family, friends, a good cup of coffee for hours of rocking and telling stories. Jennifer Wilson, relationships. Kevin Helm, relationships. A lot of people mentioned that. Now, we just did that. We have to carve it out and schedule it. It's hard to get everybody to show up, but we went to Starbucks and spent time that we could have been with our families, doing household chores, working for revenue, pursuing our purpose and changing the world. And we sat out there. And now we did talk about, we had books out on the table. We talked about meaningful stuff. We also, we didn't today so much, but generally there's times we talk about, oh, you see that movie? Or, you talk about sports because you watch that stuff and just doing life together that takes time, but we have to schedule it or it doesn't happen.
That's right. And it doesn't happen. In fact, I get irritated when it happens too fast or too short.
Yeah.
Like, if we can only meet for an hour, then what's the point? We can barely get started. And I really like the times when we can linger and there's not that, and that feels like savoring. And it's worth working really hard over here on the other side so that we can create those times.
Wait, so here's my ultimate grappling with this speed thing. And it was somewhat perpetuated by the book, again, Future is Faster Than You Think, by Kotler and Diamandis. And they're just there. They wrote the book just to talk about, I think, what they felt like were exciting things happen in AI. And, we're going to have flying cars. That convergence has happened between the mechanics of the flying car and, Elon Musk's batteries that weigh less, and it's coming together where they're going to be able to do that. We already have self-driving cars, and they're talking about this stuff. And I heard it though through my own filter and thought, we're going to be able to fulfill instantaneous gratification more and more and more and more. And my concern, and I'll say even my belief or my experientially, what it makes me feel like is it's going to help us all fulfill our instantaneous gratification, our appetites quicker. Anything that I want, I can do immediately.
Right.
And I don't see that helping us so far. It sounds good, but the results don't seem to be. I mean, we look at it right now, and I know I say this and it sounds so pessimistic, and I feel like it sounds too much, but the numbers are just the numbers. Chronic illness and disease and depression and diseases of despair and deaths of despair and suicide, they're literally just growing at a ridiculously rapid rate, to where our healthcare costs, the number one thing we spend money on in America, is going through the roof. And I think the immediacy is not helping. Again, I don't want to say that overall. It's not giving us, it doesn't seem to be adding up to true life and health and wellness.
We've got to step back and think about this like you and I are doing right now. That's the main point we're grappling with. Is in that book, they said, you know what, we're going to be able to have subspace flight. You can fly from New York to Tokyo in an hour. And just think of what you're going to do with all that extra time that you spend. And you're going to get to a fancy hotel in Tokyo, and you're going to turn the TV on.
And it's, but the bottom line, that is a false statement. Speed does not save us time. It just causes us to do more
of your base appetites, of scratching an itch. It can do that. We're not saying it does. Speed's not the problem. But when we have more and more speed, more and more free time, that's what you're saying. We're not having greater and greater thoughtfulness and purpose and mission. We're having more and more entertainment, more and more fun. And at the same time, we don't play. We don't adventure. We don't do some of these kind of things, at least in that context. We tend to swipe the screens a little more. We tend to not go garden or sit on our lawnmower tractor or think thoughtful purposes or be in deep relationships. You're right. I'm worried that when it's held up in comparison to these other things that we could be doing, mostly online, a lot of times, people don't perceive sitting on the front porch as value.
There
is value.
That's what concerns me, that I am a victim of as well. That if I am talking with somebody or communicating with somebody and say, hey, well, let's plan a meeting and talk about this more, get together, do a show or whatever I'm doing. And somebody said, and I say, well, gosh, let's look at some dates. When do you open? They go, I can do it in an hour. I can do it tomorrow. As opposed to the person who says, oh gosh, let's see, let me put you in touch with my assistant. And they come back and go, they've got time about, in 16 months at this date. Which one sounds more important? The one who's way out there, not the one here.
So busy.
But I had somebody, and I'm so regretful that I can't remember their name, who said, it was a guy worth millions. He says, no, I've crafted my life to where I'm available. I don't fill every moment. And so I'm available. So I got time. I got time now.
What becomes important right now.
Yeah. So I'm flexible. And I've thought I really would rather be that person. And I've actually made myself more, but I literally sometimes am prone to not say I'm available right now or tomorrow, because it sounds like I don't have anything going on.
Right.
Like, is that going to hurt my credibility to who I'm talking to?
Absolutely. Well, think about me and a schedule, and somebody says, oh, can I get an appointment? Sure.
We got openings all day.
Openings.
Oh, well, can I get a discount since nobody else is coming to see?
Yeah.
But there's the tension.
Yeah.
there's the tension with our speed, because I feel like, no, I'm going to use that word believe again, but that in health, I should be able to utilize smartly, intellectually, purposely, intentionally, all these conveniences and all this speed to do my work, to sustain my life and have abundance in less time, and have more time available, margin, time to think, time to ponder, time to play, time to be available for a relationship, that would be success. Yet that is just not what is given credibility today. Credibility goes to busy.
That's right. And the people who wrote in tend to say those kind of things. And like we say all the time, I think we've got a crowd of listeners who are already on the side of things. If we look at the masses and the hockey stick incidents of, did I share that quote with you that we were what was Prozac Nation has now become the United States of Xanax.
Yeah.
And so anxiety has now preempted depression. And of course, both of them are a big issue. And we've got more free time than ever. And people don't know what to put into it.
Well, that's true too. If we oh gosh, that's another aspect of it. If we have a life that is so inundated with input that we are reacting to, if we stop the input and say, no, I'm just going to be for a minute, we don't know what to do without the barrage of, yeah.
We don't have a groove, a thought process, a pattern. Gosh, I think that's what we're getting to, is that the pattern of life, the seasons, the slowness, the rhythm. We talk about that one a lot. You mentioned the one-click buying. And now in Gen Z, what we see with our kids is zero patience. There's no capacity to wait. And like my son, who, you got a son that really loves reading. And so my second one really loves reading, but he won't, once he starts a series, he won't read something else in between book 1 and book 2. And if Amazon's a day late, he just won't read. And he mopes around all day long. My book is not here. I'm like, there's a library down the street, 1,000 other books in the house. No, but I'm in a series and I can't wait. Well, what if you'd had to wait for the author to actually write the next book that comes out in a year? And it just, he doesn't have a space for that. So that there's just then I'm not going to read the book at all.
And that's just cultural. And there you go. So to the Future's Faster book, to that, we are not going to change that. So a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we will have immediate gratification. Even to my gosh, we got 3D printers. I don't even need to go. I can just make the product at some point. What are the chances? I'm not educated enough, but will we end up, if we were still in this office together 5 years from now, will we have a 3D printer? And when we need a new bottle because our SodaStream bottle got melted in the dishwasher and we need a new one, we just type in SodaStream, it automatically deducts a couple bucks and it just creates it. I really used to actually not only go to the store, you actually have to order these things. No, you just do it off your thing.
I don't know.
Well, but we're heading that way.
We are heading that way.
Everything is instantaneous. So it's going to happen. So it seems like the issue is, how are we going to control it so that we have, at the end of the day, I just wrote peace and joy. I want peace and joy. And so if the super fast stuff, if you can have it amongst that, great. Stats are not showcasing that is the point. We're having more anxiety, more depression, not peace and joy over here as things continue to speed up. And talking about that, having the free time, how it's almost got me, I just wrote it down here on the tangent of, we are getting to be recipients of input as opposed to purveyors of output. How's that? If you have time, do you know what to do with it? Do you have anything to output? Do you have a hobby? Do you have fun? Do you have play? Do you have thoughts to ponder? Do you have knowledge to try to assimilate? Or are you bereft? And so just give me more input.
Heck, you and I talked about that with me and you this morning, where my tendency after I finish a book is to feel like I got to do another book, read another book, that there's another thing to read. And the wonderful book I just read, it skitters across the surface of my mind. And
that's a good perspective.
it never goes into deep water. It never shifts the massiveness of me and the beyond. And that starts to get really weird or whatever. But if you're not expressing the deep calling to deep within your marriage, within your relationship with your kids and your God and your job and your work, then you're skittering across the surface of your life. And at the end of, and within that skittering is much more likely conclusion of depression and anxiety and lack of meaning and purpose, lack of a really big why behind the what of what it is you are inputting and then outputting. And yeah, we are, remember this AI and the capitalism, surveillance capitalism and with especially Facebook and Google, we are the commodity. My eyeballs and attention is the actual commodity that's being shifted around between Facebook and Coca-Cola.
What was the main book we read on that? We read the book on that. I can't.
It's not coming to me.
There's a book we read, and the point, folks, is that let's just think about social media. When you go online and you log on to Facebook, or which most people don't have to log in. You just put an F in your browser, and boom, Facebook pops up, or Instagram, or LinkedIn, or I don't even, whatever all the different ones are. When you do that, the moment you do that, somebody makes money. You have to look into that, but you don't have to go purchase. Don't think that it's just the ads. You, by proxy of logging on there.
And it was the documentary.
Oh, you're right. It was Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma, and
there you go.
And there's one other, but I think Social Dilemma.
I think it's Social Dilemma. So it's a documentary that we watched. You're right, and it talks about that, which isn't to make you feel bad for going on Facebook, but just to realize that
we're also the commodity when we watch the Super Bowl and we get a Ford motor car, kind of a thing. But it's just much more intimate, much more in our faces, much more also behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so and it also creates speed. How do you spell Amazon? I don't know. A.
Yeah. Yeah. If I had, I'm sure it exists. I don't use any of the voice stuff because I just don't like noise and sound other than my music. But I'm sure most people have the Alexa thing, or look how behind the times I am, where you would just say Amazon, or you just say it, whatever, Alexa, and it shows up.
Order me that SodaStream bottle thing.
Yeah. Which, again, nothing against it. I appreciate it for
we need a new refrigerator. Have you seen the new ones?
No.
You can program them for the refrigerator will analyze your milk, and when your milk or your soda or your what gets it orders.
Really? Okay. Well, so let's take that, because there are. I have an Ember, EMBER mug that's connected to my phone. So I can't just drink regular coffee, but it keeps it at 145 degrees. I love that. So again, not dissing it, but saying, to think about that, if your great grandparent came back and you were telling about all this thing, they go, "Oh, it's awesome. What do you, with all that efficiency,
you must be so happy.
You must be so happy, so much
fulfilled.
The work that we had to do back
then. It took us a week to make a pie. We had to pound it out and do this. And somebody's birthday, we had to work a week for that pie.
Okay. So I wrote down a couple of things that came to mind thinking about our grandparents. Imagine when it's a kid's birthday and they need a cake. You got to go to the store and buy all the raw ingredients, or hike or take a mule or whatever they did, and buy the raw ingredients, have your cook stove with your fire at the right temperature, and bake a cake. It took so long. Talk about wanting you to savor it, buddy. You better appreciate that cake. It took me to bake a cake, like French fries that we take for granted. People go through the drive-thru. Has anybody ever made French fries at home? It's a huge pain in the butt. Grease and splatter.
And you cut your finger every time.
Oh my! So we wouldn't do it at home if it weren't at the fast food place. It's, same thing with a milkshake. If you had to go to the theater to see the same movie, now we don't. It's just boom. It's going to be on your screen. If we had to look through a catalog and send a letter to get something that was delivered months later, we have without mass production. We take it for granted. But again, that question that if we went back in time for them to look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, if we had that."
We literally have the Dick Tracy watch, right? We've got video on our watch. We almost have flying cars. The only reason we don't is because what's the point? we don't really, it wouldn't, anyway, according to the book, it just, what would be the point of doing that? And yet our great grands would say, holy cow, we even had to worry about famine. We had to worry. And here we've got nearly every food at 9,000 feet that we lack for nothing. So why aren't we filled with joy, filled with peace, filled with security about the fact that it's all going to be there?
Yeah. Why aren't we each creating brilliant things or creative
with
things?
All of our free time and doing the arts and philosophy
but to do that, so let's go back to, we did a show, I don't remember the number, but we did a show early on about the challenge of doing, I'm going to say this challenge. We said it in being health and wellness, even to go to diet, to go away from the average American diet, standard American diet, and eat healthily. You have to be a weirdo. That means you're not going to eat the same thing as your family, coworkers, whatever. And you've got to be a weirdo. Now you can also not be militant and give in, kind of do the 80-20 rule, man. When I'm on my own, I eat well. When I'm with people, I go ahead. It's fine. And to some degree, maybe healthier, but you're going to be different. At some point, somebody's going to know you're a little different. We're talking about this now for us to all take, if we segment it and say, okay, these 100 people over here are just going to keep using speed and living speedfully. These over here are going to use speed and take the savings that we should have and have margin and they're going to be weird in regards to the culture.
I'm thinking of the Amish.
Well,
you grew up there and have they not done the same thing and said, 20 miles an hour on a horse is just fine.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do that.
I don't either.
But to that degree. So back to that.
Is their level of contentment and peace and joy any less? And I would say they're probably on the plus side.
Probably.
Maybe.
I'm going. Yeah. The enjoyment of that cake made by scratch back then, they probably all
by that person who's
literally
pouring love and care and whatever into this piece of food for you on your birthday.
And even the people having it, they haven't had a cake for 4 months because that was the last birthday and the last time somebody went to that extent. They know what went into it. Oh, cake.
Thank you.
Their joy, their dopamine was probably higher. We just run through the drive-through and I want cake and I want this and whatever. And we take it for granted. We're not appreciating it.
And the dopamine hit or whatever that is when we do that thing is far less. Well, we'll flip it around. Maybe it's far more, but we're numb to it. I would say it that way. That when you're eating that much sugar and that much, it's kind of like diabetes, right? In order to get this, or any drug, you need a little bit more to get the same kick. You need a little bit more to get the same kick. And in order to get the same dopamine hit from the same thing, you need a little bit less. You need some fasting. You need, in this case, time, speed. We're in danger of getting very ethereal when we talk about the nature of time in and of itself and the relativity and all of that.
Yeah.
I'm wrestling with time as one of the things to eat, imbibe.
Yeah.
And sit with it and be, and not have that perception that I don't have to do anything, whether productive or whether entertaining or whether, whatever, take away everything, not to get to the point of nothingness or any of something like that. But I think for you and I, it would be to be in relationship with God, with self right? Like it feels like it takes so much time and work to get there. You can't speed that.
Okay. You know what you just said? You just said something though, that's probably relevant. We do take free time away from the production and survival of life and give it primarily to entertainment. Because as busy as we all feel and strung out and anxious, we also know stats wise that we spend an inordinate amount of time viewing a screen, viewing entertainment on a screen. Now, when I'm spending all day, I mean, you and I spend most of our working day with a screen in front of us, but it's work. It's text and documents and charts and graphs and writing and corresponding, whatever. So I'm going to move that out because that's in place of if we were out chopping logs or whatever for a living. But over here of when we are scrolling social media, watching a show, watching a YouTube video, watching a movie, playing a video game, that is entertainment. And we know that there's an inordinate amount of time spent doing that, taking us away from everything as well. So we are investing it in entertainment. You know, you said something. Kendall Hudson was one of the responders here. He says, and I'm not sure I agree that time is speeding up. Time is still time. Clocks are not running faster. I suggest we are just trying to cram as much in the day as possible until we lose track of time and our phone says next on the to-do list. Yeah.
One in in that place where time is time, and we're getting into ultimate meaning, purpose. What is, in scripture, the idea of redeem the time, and what's the nature of the times that we're living in, and we are here in this time. And for me to sit there in time, I'm working towards the word flow, where you're in, like you would use the mountain bike analogy, and an hour or 2 or 5 minutes goes by and you're like, I was in the moment, I was in the flow, I was in the zone. That doesn't, or does that happen when you are speeding with the harriedness? And Dallas Willard is, what's your key to life? The ruthless elimination of hurry. Okay, then what do you put in that lack of speed? It's almost like we talk about a relationship with fasting or food. Here's a relationship with time. Like, I know time, but I would say I don't know time, and I know my kids don't know time. They don't have a relationship with it, because time is also a concept. It's in your head, and you can lose time when you're in the flow. And I think the best example is, we all know driving, and you don't remember, 50 miles worth of whatever, and because your mind is somewhere else, and you're in it but not in it. And I do want to work myself and create the grooves in my head to where that happens with work. And for me, I think it does happen. Like, an hour goes by really fast, especially if there's resonance and there's that sacred moment of connection with another human being, and goodness comes out of that is not our culture. That we have to work really hard to be becoming the kind of people that are okay with that kind of time.
Well, you remember in recent years here, we've had that sitting is the new cigarettes, right?
Yeah, but I have to change that.
What?
So last week I had that weird thing in my back.
Yeah. I think you were flat. Yeah, you couldn't move. That was last Friday.
That was last Friday.
We met. Guys met with Friday morning. You couldn't sit in that Starbucks chair.
So you know what Stefan said?
Oh, you bought your desk.
Yeah,
standing.
Standing was and standing hitched. So I'm very conscious now about saying, okay, both feet instead of kinked. Like, you're not kinked, but
I'm leaning.
Most
I'm
often
still
kinked.
Yeah,
you're standing on one leg or the other.
So for context, talking about standing desk, I have a Varidesk on my desk that I can raise up and down. We're standing. We had this custom made podcast table here. We're standing. We jerry rigged a standing desk for you out of an old desk. You don't even have an option but to stand. But standing, well, for one thing, if you're just standing there, period, you're still sedentary. Is that better than sitting? Theoretically, for your posture, you're probably, you could be, well, either way, you can still have bad posture standing. And that's what he's saying is if you're sitting there standing, but you're hitched on one leg, or you're leaning on your desk, or you're whatever, that it's not much better. And he's saying that it exacerbated your back problem.
Right. I got kinked, for lack of a better word. And then I did this activity over here, and that created a muscle spasm. But anyway, your point.
Well, but okay. So the sitting is the new cigarettes. I think it would be more appropriate than to say sitting or being sedentary at a desk is the new cigarettes, whether you're standing or sitting, and you're just there. You're not having a life of movement and whatever. That's the new cigarettes. Well, so that has been said. You can go look at that. Sitting's the new. And this topic got me to thinking recently of, I think hurry is the new cigarettes. Hurry is the disease that's going out there, stealing our true life, as our show is titled.
Busy,
frantic, anxious, just filling each moment. And again, I'm intrigued by this idea of input and output, that we are not the concept, back to Pascal, Blaise Pascal, his statement of we can't sit alone with ourselves for 15 minutes. We are so addicted to input.
Yeah. Even, and again, even the good stuff, even good input. Like this morning, we were creating an example of a guy who's essentially idolized Bible study. Like theoretically, it would be good to do your devotions and that kind of thing. But it's like, yeah, until it in and of itself becomes a craving of that kind of input, that you can't still sit alone by yourself in a room for 15 minutes with your own thoughts, because you need that input.
And there's where Simon Sinek has done a lot of great videos on the dopamine hit. I mean, why sit there when you can go get a dopamine hit and you can go on the screen and, thinking about this instantaneous thing that we can fulfill just about every desire almost instantaneously without leaving your couch, chair, office, home, whatever. You do not have to have a relationship with anyone. You can do it all. And we can go to that to sex. I mean, there's porn, whatever you want, and you can get devices, and I don't want to get too graphic, but you can be pretty fulfilled from a physiologic. Well, I mean, it's not really, it's obviously not the same. It's an artificial, but
it's going to go one layer of worse. Remember when we talked about Ready Player One?
Yeah.
And, then you don't even have to leave your apartment. You've got this connection. You wear a wetsuit that it stimulates you here and there and everywhere to feel like whatever it is you're seeing on screen. I don't know if you know this, but Ready Player Two. So the book is out. And so I read that.
Yeah, maybe so.
It's not as good as Ready Player One, but it goes even more to where you put on a brain thing. And so now when you're online and eating an apple, it is literally stimulating the apple eating. It is no different.
That would make fasting easier.
You physiologically, you can step into a female body. You can step into an animal. It got really weird. And the Peter Diamondises of the world and Elon Musk and all of these guys are saying, yeah, we can do that. We can already, computing power is now such that we can get all of your brain onto a chip in the quantum realm of computing. Well, and I think our culture now, because God or a higher purpose is no longer fulfilling people, whatever the higher purpose is. We don't have a higher purpose. Therefore, it's the lower purposes that become the driving force. And one of those purposes is simply hurry. I got to go teach class. I got to go be somewhere. And consequently, we're falling through the cracks more and more and more at a younger and younger age, whether it's depression, anxiety, or other physiologic brokenness. In that we see that in our marriage, we see that in our families. And I would say we see it in the very culture that we're in the unraveling norms. Some of those are bad. And we need to have a healing racial construct, right? Like we've had bad things that need to get healed. That's a higher, but it's not the highest. Oh, you weren't, because your speed of getting your coffee wasn't very effective this morning. You missed the first part of the conversation.
Yeah.
A CNN doctor wrote, what's the highest good? The highest good of all goods. So here we are with a world that's not going to say God anymore or religion. So the highest good for a CNN MD, bodily autonomy. And
I don't even understand that.
I get to scratch an itch. I am God of my bodily autonomy. Whether I want to be male, female, black, white, identify young, old, bodily autonomy become essentially Ready Player Two. You essentially Adam and Eve. You can become a God.
Are the beginning and the end.
You are the beginning and the end. Bodily autonomy. And then underneath that, I would say, is the busy, hurry, next vacation, next drink of soda, and we're all in it. We all have to drink something. And it's the bothness of but is that your purpose in life? Kevin Miller's to scratch that itch of being whatever you can imagine yourself to be.
Well, when you say that purpose, I'm prone to thinking, as we're ruminating here, that without a true, deep, authentic
transcendent
purpose. Without that, then the hurry and doing and busy is at least a purpose. There's something to do.
I would agree with you there. And with her, if there isn't a transcendent truth that goes beyond your body and my body, if there isn't a transcendent truth, that's truth, capital T, then you're right. She's right. But she's not right. Because what that then means is that everybody is a God unto themselves, and I can do whatever I want, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's going to be absolute hell.
Well, then we're, we're back to motive. One of my favorite topics to some degree is my motive. Even if we look at high performance, I mean, you can have high performance in a category, your job in a sport. Obviously we think about it there, in wherever you can have that and wreck yourself outside of that, but have high performance. Is that my goal? Is just filling the time goal, entertainment, whatever? Or is, if we come back to these, seems more and more untangible. Is that a word? Intangible. Thank you. Intangible aspects of peace and joy and fulfillment. But who cares at this?
Well, okay, here's a great example. You won't know this because you're not a sport following guy, but last year college, and then there's the number 1 draft pick, right? Like who's picked first in the first round.
Right.
And the guy that was picked first in the first round was
is this football?
Yeah. Quarterback. And do you know what his biggest ding was as the football in NFL industry was looking at him and saying, I don't know if he has what it takes. He's got the numbers and the stats and the skills and the whatever else. I think it was a Sports Illustrated article, was interviewing him. And they said, what if you don't get number 1? What if you don't, whatever? And his answer was, I'll be okay with that. I've got life outside of football. That was the number 1 reason why they thought he might not go number 1, was because
he didn't say it's my life.
Exactly. Exactly. And it became actually a detriment that this guy said, no, I want to win. In fact, he's only known winning. He's hardly ever, from high school on, he's only lost like 10 games or something. It's just remarkable. So here he is, and he's just, and I have so much respect for him as a young man being able to say that. And he did go number 1. And anyway, we have a culture that doesn't glorify the fact that he's got life outside of football and he's a great dude.
I keep thinking of the word you used a minute ago with, gets so ethereal. We can go so far down the rabbit hole of going, I'm about to drive away and I'm going to go into the woods and camp by myself. I got my mountain bike and honestly, I've got my computer and a charger thing, because I want to write and I want to be able to do it on there and stuff, but I'm going to go spend time just being alone. But who wants to do that? And who's happy in and of themselves? But how on earth are we going to find peace, joy, and fulfillment and know what decisions to make with the barrage of the reality that we live in? That's just going to get more unreal and artificial intelligence, and to know what we want and what at the end of the day is going to give us peace and joy and fulfillment, because that's what we're dying from right now. We are dying. Everything's faster and we are sicker and sadder than ever. And so I'm back to this. I'll probably title the show this of, is the speed, are we in control of the speed? And let's put in there speed, the conveniences of the privilege.
Yeah.
Are we in control of all this stuff and using it for our benefit? Or is it using us? And we are, like we talked about, we're just a commodity in the system, helping it run along, and it is killing us.
It is. And in order, the human mind, and that's where we would say we're made in the image of God. We have got creativity, free will, choice, power, and decision. And that's what you just said. Is my creativity, free will, choice, power, and decision being pinged so much so that I barely have any choice, that Facebook can tell me exactly what I'm going to do? And that is one of those, we read that in one of those marketing advertising book, is the amount of statistics that they can generate and look at you and you're 50 and whatever, then they can say, you shop here, you buy here, the amount of food or money you spend per week, and they can predict it. And with meaning we are the commodity. We don't even know it. And to step outside of that, like you said, you're going to be a weirdo in some way, shape, or form. Well, I would say yes. And within that pathway, that path of life is a much higher chance of peace, joy, fulfillment.
And to that, I mean, we are, like you would say, we're all on the spectrum.
Yes.
Kevin Miller, sitting here professing this stuff. I am allowing myself to be controlled by a lot of this stuff, to be manipulated, to be persuaded. They're getting my money. I think I'm in control because I think, no, I spent that money on something I wanted, but they know that they added that in and I added it on and I supersized my life. And I'm a product of that. Am I over here? Am I in control of it? Or is it in control of me? I don't know how to keep coming back to that. Are we taking this privilege,
what we want to do for ourselves, because you and I are talking to ourselves and people are listening, is awareness. Be becoming more aware, be becoming more appreciative, grateful, be becoming less hurried and more in the flow, in the zone with yourself, with God, with your wife, with your kids, and with work. Therein lies the path of life.
Yeah. I love the concept of that. Do I know who I am and what I want? And am I able to just, for some reason, you just gave me the vision of sitting in my chair, which is right over here on wheels. Do I ever just push the chair back away from the screens and go, okay, what's going on? Am I doing what I want to do? Is this producing my true, or back to the name of your clinic and of the show? Am I becoming me? Yeah. Am I becoming the me I want to become? Is this my true life? And again, it's not just,
and the answer is going to be no, not as true as it could be. You're on the spectrum.
Yes. So am I 10% of my true life, or am I at 90%? But I want to hit on what you said as we talk about this message. If somebody hears this and it's revelatory, or it gets them excited or ashamed or whatever, that the show's going to end. Life is over here. It's the culture that we know. In June 18th, as we're recording 2021, and everything is speeding up. It's as fast as it's ever been. It's going to speed up more. And to do anything different is so difficult to jump out of the norm.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's hard for you. It's hard for me. It's hard for anybody. Even in our blue zone, it is difficult. And I don't want to downplay that to jump outside. But again, who are we committed to? What are we committed to?
That's right. What's the bigger purpose? What drives you?